Hey guys, it's Mathel here once again, and I've got quite a lot of clips to show you about the Scion dual Cospris Cascade and Freeze Pulse character. Now, as I've mentioned before, it doesn't have to be a Scion. You can probably build this with quite a lot of different other ascendancies. So when people ask why not Inquisitor, why not Berserker, whatever, by all means you can do that. This is just the way I went with, and it seems to work out pretty well, though by all means there might be stronger options available. So I wanted to show you guys a bunch of clips of the gameplay, of the Endgame gameplay, because I've done quite a lot of mapping here and it has been very fun, very smooth, and pretty damn efficient. The way just the waves come out from the freezing pulse, shatters, obliterates just about everything, and it's a pretty safe playstyle with the way you do freeze everything, and just the speed of your whirling blades comboed with the amount of shit you're constantly throwing out ends up being a pretty good single target as well as a good clear skill. Now it once again is a lot of fun to combo it with some rampage action and some double beyond, or just even single beyond, as well as the harbingers going off. A lot of stuff happens, and beyond bosses typically die just about instantly as soon as they spawn, so I've been going pretty hard on beyond here or there, just trying to have as much fun as possible with the completely hectic clear that goes on to do with this dual Cospris bullshit, I guess. As well as that, I do want to show you some Guardians, Uber Ethereal, and Shaper by the end of this clip, but for now, this is basically just a tier 12 Vault, triple sextanted, and with double Beyond. Oh, actually, this might just be a single Beyond, but in any case, you can see the impact that the skill has, and that the Freeze Pulse has. It's kind of hard to tell what's happening most of the time, but I think Freeze Pulse is clearing for the most part, while Cascade is helping out on single target, and also helping on the clear as well. And at this point I have something like level 19 gems and 2 cascades and 2 freezing pulses, and I'm using purple Herald of Ice, which you can see just doesn't really show up too much as a Herald of Ice MTX, but it does make the Herald of Ice just a little bit different. It's sort of a cleaner shatter than you would otherwise have with other Herald MTXs. And here is a decent example of some single target. So it's not the best single target in the world, but at my level of gear, you can farm pretty damn well everything up to tier 15 very smoothly without really any problems. And then we did run quite a few beachheads as well, or something like 3 beachheads, and it's pretty damn good for this as well. Now it is extremely hectic, as you can see, especially when multiple portals are being spawned, but it's fairly safe. Just have to avoid certain things here or there. The freeze comes into play quite a lot, and you can see that my leech right now isn't amazing, but it is all coming from a series promise at this stage. Not until having done 2 full Guardian runs did I decide to go into Warlord's Mark, but I would very much at this point recommend you probably map with Warlord's Mark instead of Frostbite. This is perfectly fine. I am sustaining this way off of just a series flask and no Warlord's Mark, so all of my leech is just a series flask, but as much as I was going for a completely max damage setup, I'm just not sure running Frostbite is actually the smartest plan for mapping in general. You really will feel a lack of leech in quite a lot of situations, so it's probably better to just run Blasphemy Warlords like I ended up doing, though I mapped almost exclusively with the Frostbite setup. I think if you are going to be struggling with some of your survivability, a Warlord setup is the way to go, or to actually just replace one of your support circuits in your Cospris or your main chest setup with a life leech gem. So I'd keep my eyes on that if you're trying out this build and you think you want a bit more survivability. And this is a good example of our Uber Ethereal. I think this was the first run, and it went pretty smooth. The trash gets completely destroyed by any sort of cold skills, and it's fairly safe in the end, even against the craziest of setups, where you can see here that's a pretty dangerous trash room. Everything gets frozen, and for the most part trash is very smooth, but some of the bosses can be a little tricky. This trio here, it's not too bad, it starts out okay, but I don't really have a bleed flask, and it did get me in trouble. And as well as that, you do have to actually blade flurry things to get your procs happening. So you won't always get those procs happening unless you have something right next to you to attack, and that can be a little bit dangerous. Overall, the damage there was pretty damn good, and at this point I do have level 20 gems and a couple of level 21s even. So the damage you are seeing is basically maxed out, but I am running Warlord's Mark at this stage. You should be able to see for the survivability as well as the Arctic armor. So I've tried to balance the character a bit more for endgame at this point and not just full potato damage, and even so you can still mess it up, as you see there. Took a whole bunch of spears, but it is recoverable. Now the damage here is not too incredible against Uber Atziri, but it is fairly reliable and it is very much a comfortable Uber running character when you have the full know-how of an Uber Atziri clear. It's probably not the easiest character to start an Uber Atziri campaign on, and it's certainly not going to be the cheapest. So I'd keep cautious of that. If you're seeing this and thinking, holy shit, great endgame character, I would probably be a little bit cautious, and this is basically a fairly perfected setup at this point. It's just overall, I'd say, a really nice character to run for maps and clear, and just fun. But if you're looking for an absolute endgame destroyer, then you may have to spend a good bit of currency, or maybe even go a different ascendancy, because this one wasn't strictly that good for the endgame, mostly for some good clear and some reflect protection, which is what the Scion does for you. So you can see here, this is the Chimera fight, and the ads get completely pummeled. It's a fairly safe encounter overall. The only real danger I have on this fight is certain bad map mods, and then the smoke phase. If you don't get him quick enough, you can take quite a lot of damage on this smoke phase, but for the most part I have not had those problems. I'm just aware that they can be problems, I suppose. So yeah, damage here is pretty damn sweet, and he goes down very nicely. It's a pretty damn clean fight. Then into Hydra. It's kind of an annoying boss fight because our ideal DPS circumstance involves Frost Bomb, as well as being able to stand still and Blade Flurry a lot, and also have an Ancestral Protector going. So having to move around a lot, dodge a lot, and this particular map I think had minus max maybe, and some lightning damage, something like that. So everything here hits super hard, and I do have to try and avoid everything. I get clipped a few times and ultimately die. But the damage isn't anything super incredible. It is just fairly solid Hydra damage. I'm pretty sure I've had much better than this, but I've also had a lot worse, so it's not the worst character for this sort of circumstance. When you get everything rolling just right, you can actually have quite a lot of damage going, but it certainly is not the endgame destroyer you're looking for, I would say. Because this one here is a pretty good example. Minotaur was probably one of the harder Guardians for me, because a lot of it should involve face tanking, and you can't really face tank too reliably with my current leech setup. Maybe if I changed one of my supports into life leech, I'd have a much better leech. I never actually explored that option. I just tried to sustain off of Atziri Flask and Warlord's Mark, and that wasn't ever really quite good enough for a pure face tank on a boss like this, and he doesn't die, you know, extremely quickly, so you can't quite afford to face tank for that long, since, as you can see here, I had to reset my flasks, and quite often I am resetting flasks at least one time in a Guardian fight, just to get through and be able to Diamond Flask all over again, since Diamond Flask is an absolute huge DPS increase for us, just the level of procs and then the way our spells will also crit through Diamond Flask. It's kind of very important to have our flasks up. It's not to say we don't do damage without flasks, but yeah, they are very important. And then on top of that, my Ice Golem is super important with the Helm enchant. It's something like 6% accuracy for me, and then, you know, a good maybe 5 crit, let's say, something like that. So it's pretty damn useful, but the Phoenix fight here is actually fairly smooth for the build. Just got to avoid a bunch of his attacks, shoot, and you kill just about everything out there. The Phoenixes are fairly smooth when, you know, on a right sort of map, and it is an okay Guardian fight, but like I said earlier, one of the big problems is you do have to really melee shit kind of with your Blade Flurry to actually get any procs happening, and that can put you in some danger when you really badly need to kill something, but you have to be right next to it instead of a little bit away. And once again, probably a good idea to reset your flasks every now and again on a fight like this, just to be as safe as possible. And then lastly, we did have Shaper. Now, this damage on Shaper was actually pretty acceptable. The fight does get a bit hectic because you do have to melee quite a bit and keep your Frost Bombs down, your Ancestral Protector down, your Golem up, so there's quite a bit to do for perfect DPS circumstances, which you're always going to try and chase. And overall, when you can get all those happening, the damage isn't too bad. But it's not the greatest Shaper killer. It does take a bit of practice, I'd say. I did 3 runs, I think, and they were pretty clean, but it's just not the easiest character to do it on, I'd say. And like I said, once again, I am fairly well geared at this point, so it's not going to be probably something everyone can achieve on this build. Overall, it's an okay boss killer, but it is basically, as I mentioned, just pure unadulterated map clearing fun. So if you're going to build this character, I don't want you to get mad about boss killing ability. Just enjoy it for what it is, which is a really insane mapping character. If you can push it to the level where you can actually kill the bosses, that's just great too, but please don't expect to hit that same level. It is kind of taxing on your gear, currency, all of that to hit this same sort of stage for a boss clear and for the single target DPS. So now that's all said and done and all the clips are shown, it was pretty damn amazing, and I do want to show you exactly what my setup now looks like, what I've changed since the last video. So I played around a bunch with the passive tree to optimize it as much as I can, and I hit level 92 at this stage. Now looking at the passive tree, basically I did try and get as much life as possible where I could, just missing this one node over here, picked up a few over here, and if you really want more, you can go down here and grab it, because for general content clearing, my damage is fairly overkill. At this point, I'd probably drop these crit multis and this attack speed and grab the life if you want to be a bit more sustainable in high level 90s and all those high tier maps. I did go pretty far out of my way to get just about every jewel socket, and that is because my jewel sockets are very important to me for damage. As you can tell from the passive tree, there isn't that much damage on it. It's largely just spacing out to crit and the life and a bit of travel. So our jewels fill out a lot of our damage. So spell damage, cold damage, crit multi, and all kinds of different crit multis are what you're looking for on your jewels, because that's where you get most of your damage. At this point, I have quite a lot of crit multi. You can see here 600 on a spell. That spell damage is actually worth more to me. So just cold damage, spell damage, that's actually worth more to me than crit multi at this point. But until you hit this level of crit multi, you definitely want a lot on your jewels. And just for single target bossing, I did end up taking out my second first snow. So I only had one of them for most of the boss kills and all that, but while mapping, you probably want to use 2 first snows. It feels a lot better for clear that way. So that's basically all we need to know about the passive tree at this point, and I guess the jewels are built around that. If you can't get a lot of jewels, if you can't get 3 prop jewels especially, your damage won't look anywhere near like mine, but it will still be adequate for the most part, I would think. I did end up divining both of my Cospris to 13% attack speed, just so I can hit my attack speed thresholds, and I did hit 2 level 21 gems. So I was leveling 4 different gems, 2 cascades and 2 freeze pulses, and 2 of them ended up valing into 21s, which is a pretty damn nice boost. The other 2 didn't really change at all. And I only started doing the endgame content once I hit level 20 gems. So bear in mind that this was with a couple of 21s. So your damage should be just a bit worse on the endgame bosses if you don't have those. Now aside from that, I did have to min-max my gems a bit. Since you're running 2 Cospris with 2 different spell setups that are just sucking up gem sockets, you have to be really decisive about what you put in your gem sockets. In the end, I could not afford Orb of Storms anymore and the power charge on crit setup, so instead I just ran Frost Bomb attached to Arcane Surge, so that's where we keep our Arcane Surge from whenever we drop a Frost Bomb underneath a monster, Blood Rage for some map clear, and then Ancestral Protector, and that is specifically for a lot of attack speed, because you do want to hit attack speed threshold so you can hit as many cast on crits as possible. Currently 0.18 attacks, that's just a little bit over 5. You have your Protector down and we get down to 0.15, so that's a good sizable increase. You get our Onslaught Flask up, we're almost at 8 attacks a second. When you have Blood Rage and Frenzy charges up, it really is about 8 attacks a second, and that's where you maximize your damage. So that's what I felt I had to do, drop Orb of Storms entirely. And over here we have Warlords and Blasphemy. Up to you if you want to use Frostbite or Warlords, but in the end, I think this is better for the end game. Then I have Ice Golem and Herald of Ice. As well as that, I started to run Arctic Armor in my Whirling Blade, Faster Attack, Fortify setup. And the reason I only have one Golem, even though I can have two, is because I just can't get a second Golem in my setup. So I'm just running 2 Ice Golems. The buffs do not stack, mind you. You still only get 1 lot of crit and accuracy. But you can see here my damage, or my accuracy over here, is 90%. Without the Golem, it's only 85%. So the buff enchant and all that is quite a lot of accuracy for me. And you do have to get accuracy in at least a couple of places if you're going to go this dual wield route, instead of using something like a Lycosidae. And one weapon, which is certainly an option, makes gearing a bit easier, so by all means go for that if you think it's best for you. It probably is a cheaper and more well-rounded option, especially for the accuracy related issues, but I was fine with this. And ultimately I bought a 6-link Belly of the Beast with the right colors, just for a bit more life, because without the belly I wouldn't be hitting 6k life without all of the sort of skipping of this node over here and having just maximum damage jewels. None of my jewels had life on them, so you can probably hit 7k life if you go all out on jewels and this, but this is all I did and it seemed to work fine with a Belly of the Beast. The colors will be a little bit hard to get, so bear that in mind with that, whereas a Carcass Jack was very easy colors. Ultimately, I think that's all I'll say for the character, guys. It was an absolute blast playing. I had a lot of fun with this, and I'll probably touch Cospri's Malice in the future again, maybe a different Ascendancy next time in another league, because it was pretty damn worth playing. Just keep an eye on how expensive the swords are, because if they're too expensive, might not be worth doing. Or if they're too expensive, probably don't get 2 of them. Just use 1 with a Lycosidae or a Catalyst offhand. So yeah, that's all guys. Thank you very much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and see you next time.